Welcome to our second session of the day. Our departmental presentation this afternoon is from the fire department. So for second session for the 2016-2020 5-year financial plan for Wednesday, January 20th. The agenda is in front of us. A motion to approve the agenda would be in order.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. Welcome, Fire Chief Ply.
Mr. Mayor, Council, members of the public, Wes. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to acknowledge Deputy Chief Wes Patterson here. You've all met. He's 6 months new to us, and he's been picking up the slack that I've left behind at the fire hall during my absence. Has not slept since. Mr. Mayor, I've got a budget presentation for our 2016-2020 draft financial plan for the fire department. I got to tell you, I don't generally put pictures on here because a number of years back, some other managers were giving me the gears about, well, you guys have all these pictures, you know, so I've stayed away from pictures. I did use them in 2 pages. I used them on this front page because we had more fires in 2015 than we have had in my 25-year career. And I don't know why, there hasn't really been a solid theme through them. It just was a run, and you'll recall that. So I thought we'd share a couple of those photos there on that cover page. If you have questions, if you want to hold until the end, or if you want to ask as you go. Let's see if I can work this. The template of this presentation is similar to what you've seen in the past. Our long-term financial strategy at the fire department is the direction we've received from the city, is maintain level of service and maintain control on expenditures. So we've been maintaining a level of service, and in the fire business that generally means staffing levels. It's tied very closely to staffing levels. So we manage all the costs that are within our control, and as you know, there's some costs that are outside of the city's control. We have in the past, we extended the working lives of our fire engines from 20 years to 30 years. That's not common in the industry, and we've been doing that for about 8 years now. And I'll tell you in a little while that the fire underwriter survey is coming to Port Alberni this year, and so we're going to test our practice. They're going to pass judgment on it, and I think they're going to say it's good, but we're going to be tested. This year we are discontinuing the tender truck service. That's the big tanker truck, the old 1978 tanker. We kept it in service a year longer than we intended to because it was linked to the Franklin River Road fire protection, and that is now discontinued. So we're in the process of getting rid of the tender truck. I think we're close to getting that done. And I think I'll be coming back to you with a report, likely not for next Monday, but hopefully the meeting after on that topic. We've been renewing our existing fire hall. It's 50 years old, built in 1966, and like a lot of other city buildings. And over the last long while, we've been chipping away at renewing it, and we're very proud of that facility. It's got lots of life left in it. There's no need in the foreseeable future to replace that building, and we're seeing a lot of municipalities replacing fire departments. Qualicum Beach just did one. Beautiful buildings, but it's not the kind of infrastructure I think that we want to be spending money on. We don't need to. This building, because we've been good stewards, the city has been good stewards, this building's got lots of life left in it. And as you know, we partner wherever we can. And here's a list of some of the partner agencies that we work with. For each one of those, there's a story. And we could probably do pages of partnerships, and they are in fact city partners, not just fire department partners. And if council would like to talk with anyone, we can do that. But I'll carry on. Community engagement. This is the second slide with lots of pictures. It shows a little bit of what we do throughout the year. Some fire prevention work, certainly a lot of fire prevention work, and some public outreach. We were involved quite heavily this past year with Air Quality Council and hosted we were the host venue for their Burn It Smart session, and we actually had a firewood stacking contest in the fire department, which is probably wrong on some level, but it was fun, and a number of other things. Fire department operating budget. This is a fairly straightforward budget. This is not a public works budget with projects and lots of things going on. We have staff, and we have facilities, and we have rolling stock. So over the 5-year plan, as you know, in the fire world, salaries are generally tied to salaries in other communities, as they are here. We're tied to Campbell River and Powell River, and they are tied to other communities. So it's basically what has been termed a BC rate. I don't like that term, but that's the term floating around. And the linkage is the driver for the wage, the 2.5 per year that you see there, is the city of Delta. They signed an 8-year deal that ends at the end of 2019 for 2.5 each year. And that wage increase has either been replicated in bargaining or replicated in arbitration, binding arbitration, everywhere else since. So those are our biggest driver is salaries, and the resulting budget increase you'll see this year 1.9% because we've controlled some of the other costs that aren't salary driven, and you see the numbers there for as they add up over the 5-year plan. Generally, our costs are known and predictable, and again, it's a different kind of department. It's not like works where you're subject to snowfall and which lines break and that sort of thing. We can plan for replacement and plan for staffing and replacement of equipment. So we know with reasonable certainty what our costs are. We don't necessarily know what our revenues are going to be. So what we find is year to year, year after year, we find ways to generate increased revenue. And so I'm hoping that in 17 through 20, we can reduce that overall budget increase. Somewhere down below 2 would be nice. So there's a breakdown of line by line. Revenue, the top one in the green, and the rest are expenditures. On the revenue side, our revenue is predicted to be up just over $15,000. The bulk of that, $15,000, is we anticipate coming from Fortis. Director of Finance, Kathy Rothwell, told you that we're receiving, I think, $74,000 this year from Fortis. And that money is to offset costs incurred by the city for Fortis being in our community, generally considered to be disrupting our streets and sidewalks. Fortis also disrupts our fire service, if you can use that term. We respond to a number of gas-related incidents for which we incur costs, including overtime costs. So we've shown a percentage, or portion of that Fortis revenue as a revenue against the fire department where we incur costs associated with Fortis. That, in the end, is a council decision. If you want to show that revenue somewhere else, we can do that. It's just going to it would be showing less here, and the net would be higher here. There's no new money spent because of that. We're already spending that money. We're trying to reflect. Council often asks us to find ways to offset the cost of fire. Well, here's a way that here's somebody who's giving the city money to recompense us for costs that we incur. So that's a long way to say that that's where that money comes from. On the expenditure side, most of it driven by salaries. In administration, fire crew is salary driven. So where you see a 2.5% is generally driven by salary. Where you see a 2% or less, it's driven by inflation costs. And for a total of 1.9 increase. Total of $60,000 over last year's. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, if I may. One question I had, where would it fall under? Which budget line would it fall under when it comes to safety code inspections for new businesses and so forth?
That would come under fire prevention, 22441. And the lion's share there is salary. There's a small amount for public interaction.
Okay, and if I may ask at this time,
Yeah.
anytime there's a new business,
Yeah.
and I don't know if our city planner could answer that, every time they obtain a business license or whatever, they have to pass the fire code for inspection, or do they not?
So, and you're right, Scott's better versed in this than I am, and he spoke to it earlier, that the business license application process now begins in finance. And so the finance department receives the application and distributes it to building and bylaw and fire. And all three of those departments look at that application with their own. So the building inspector looks at it against the building code. The bylaw enforcement officer looks to that application against the city's bylaws. And the fire department looks at it, the fire inspector, against the fire code. So that's basically a fire inspection. And when that business application has met all three, the criteria in all three of those areas, they get a license.
Okay, so the fire inspector is actually involved.
Very involved,
thank you.
In fact, our three inspectors, building, fire, and bylaw inspection, work very closely together.
Thank you.
I'll move on. This slide you've seen before. It just represents that the overwhelming majority of our costs are personnel related. And really it's a service that is personnel delivered. If you looked at an ambulance service or a police service, they'd be very similar. So the costs that are within our control without changing the level of service are building and apparatus and equipment. And as I told you earlier, we've extended the lives of apparatus. We've extended the life of our building through investment. So we're managing those costs that we can. We do manage the personnel costs. I don't want to say that it's a blank check. We manage that by saying no a lot. So if you speak to our, saying no. You know, a lot of times when our personnel come to us for different things, we say no. And sometimes that can result in challenges between management and labor. I have to say we have terrific employees, and they understand. And so we're fortunate that way. But in a lot of municipalities that don't say no, the costs just run rampant. And I'm very proud of the way that we've, as a collective, the way that we've controlled costs. Just looking at each one of those pieces of pie, the building maintenance, $58,000 projected for 2016. That's an increase of 2%. And last year, you may not recall, so I thought I'd point it out, that we made a reduction in that line of 9.8 as a result of efficiencies through changes, and we insulated the ceiling, we changed the windows, we put in new HVACs and boilers, and we were able to pull down that overall cost by almost 10%. So this year, you know, now, so we pull it down, and now we're gonna have to go ahead with inflation. So that's the building piece. Apparatus and equipment, we talked about, we extended the lives of our equipment. That's 8% of our expenditures, a fairly big chunk, and it's projected to go up 1.9 this year, a total of $5,000. And last year it didn't go up at all. Through some changes we made operationally last year, we managed to reduce our fuel consumptions, and as a result, we didn't have any increase at all in apparatus last year. And at the same time as we're extending the lives of apparatus, we're going to be driven to increase costs for maintenance and operational interruptions through downtime, and we've been managing that really nicely. So I'm really proud of our mechanic, who's a firefighter and a mechanic. So he's on the wrenches while he's a firefighter, and he's maintained our fleet, even though we've increased the lifespan of these vehicles. So he's done a really good job. The one on the right, we're not running anymore. That's a little bit outside our scope. Only if we really have to. The third piece of the pie, the personnel, again, 90%. It's not just unionized personnel. We've got a little bit of money for QP support, and that's an anticipated 1.75 increase this year. And we anticipate for our firefighters 2.5, as I said, and we anticipate for the exempt staff, Wes and myself, a 1%, although that's not been determined yet.
You know, when you put it into those terms, I'm assuming what I understand, I understand you to say 1.75% translates into an increase of $140.
Yes, that's correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Personally, that helps me a lot.
Oh, does it?
Because
Okay.
it puts it into perspective.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just a percentage, and it's, you know, I have to do some work then to figure out, well, what does it actually mean?
Thank you. Yeah, so we can get misled by percentages. You can be up 100% on an expense that is almost nothing, so it doesn't really say much, right? Thank you. On the capital side, so everything we looked at was operating budget, that 1.9% increase on operating. On the capital side, what does that say? Last year, when we gave you a 5-year, and council adopted a 5-year plan, in the 2016 year, we had 5 items that were scheduled to come from taxation. They totaled $150,000, and there were 2 items coming from reserve totaling $85,000. So last year, council approved a 2016 capital plan of $235,000. We've pared that down, so we have a better understanding now of what we do need this year, and we've pared that down to 1 item from taxation and 1 item that was carried forward from last year. So last year, I'll talk about each one of those individually, but this budget is considerably pared down from what we discussed for 2016 last year. So on the capital, that 1 item, the $60,000, is replacing the fire hall generator. The carried over item from last year that was funded in IRF and was supposed to be done last year, we didn't get it done, is a control room console revamp replacement. And then replacement, I want to talk to you about replacement of our ladder truck scheduled for 2017. So I've got a slide for each one of those. The generator, It's 50 years old too. So installed in the fire department in 1966. And when we did a seismic upgrade in the 1990s, it used to be in the basement of our hose tower. And the engineers looked at it and said, yeah, it's going to be really expensive to make that hose tower survive render it so it can survive an earthquake. So we built an external building, moved that same generator out there, and it's in a new facility away from the building. So it's expected that that tower is going to come down in a big earthquake, and we actually hardened the roof of the fire hall so that it can catch the top of the tower, if you can believe that. And that was the engineering fix for that issue. The tower is going to fall over. We're going to get out of it. We don't park under it, and it's going to fall on the roof. And the generator's safe off-site with buried cable. So it's a good setup, but the generator itself is 50 years old. A couple of years ago, we were looking at replacing this, and we talked to the city's to Wayne Chevelday, the mechanical supervisor, and he said that we don't earth these units because in theory, a diesel engine will run forever. And we talked to the electricians, and they said, well, in theory, electrical windings will last forever if they're maintained. So in theory, these things run forever. So we have this exercise coming in June, exercise coastal response. And I turned to our mechanic and I said, from June 7th through 10th, we're doing this exercise. I want to flip the switch and be on generator power for 4 days straight. And he said, you're kidding, it'll never do it. It won't run that long. It's leaking, it's got problems. And so that's telling enough for me. If our mechanic says we can't get 4 days out of it, then we need to have for an emergency building, we need to replace that thing. So that is the driver for this project. It had been in 2019 because I wasn't comfortable holding it forever. And I want to move it up this year as the only capital project from taxation. Yeah, enough said on that probably. I can answer questions if you like. Yeah. And the other one that was held over from last year, this was IRFed. When we originally put this console in, we used to do dispatch services. So it was pre-911, so we would take hot calls there. And then 911 came along, and we still had a control room operator. And then some other changes happened. We put that control room person on the truck. So we don't actually have anybody sitting there 24/7 anymore. So that whole thing was designed for that kind of a workstation. And the electronics, probably more than 50% of the electronics have failed on that thing. So the buttons that are linkages to things in the building and whatnot don't work. The main radio doesn't work. So we've done a bunch of workarounds, and we find that the console, and when we first bought it back in the early 90s, we started IRFing for its replacement. And then at some point when we made that work change, we stopped IRFing for it, but the money that was there stayed there. And now it's time for us to just get that thing gone, reconfigure that space to be basically a control center for major emergency, an operational control center. And so that console's got to go. We want to spend that money that's in IRF. It was approved last year. I didn't get the work done, and I just didn't get it done. And I want to revisit that project this year. So I don't think it needs your approval, but I did want to point out to you that it's been carried over from last year. It doesn't need your approval, I don't think, but you're allowed to take it back if you want. I think that's the relationship. Is that correct? The other one I want to talk to you about is the ladder truck replacement due for 2017. So these things are very expensive units. By 2017, we'll have $1,050,000 in IRF for that replacement. It was built and purchased in 1997. It's got a 20-year lifespan. That lifespan is driven primarily by fire underwriter survey. And as I said, they're coming to town probably in the third quarter this year to gauge the fire protection services in the city. And so our plan with this, we've done a lot of sleuthing. There's a potential to extend the life of a ladder truck up to 5 years and get recognition from the underwriters. Our plan, we've done some mechanical reviews on it, whatnot. We've included Wayne Chevelday in the conversation. We're satisfied that it is mechanically sound to operate for, I'm targeting 4 years to extend the life of it. The ladder itself is in good shape. We don't want to extend the life of a critical piece of apparatus if it's going to fail during that extension. So I'm sensitive to that we're somewhat extending here by extending the life of it because municipalities generally don't do that. But I'm convinced there's value in this thing and that it's still very serviceable and that we can run it for another 4 years. So what I'm proposing is that we run it for 4 years and then we get it replaced by, I guess that would be 2021. And another factor that doesn't change the operational part is the Canadian dollar is at 68 cents right now, and these things come out of the States. And we probably couldn't replace that one for $1 million today, just with the way the dollar is. So it's not something, when we started IRFing it, we were thinking 85-ish cents, right? So 85, 90, and we're in it's not the year to be buying a ladder truck. Hopefully this dollar turns around for us. So the process is, excuse me, we apply to underwriters for an extension, and we give them a whole bunch of documentation, which we're in the process of assembling now, and they respond to us and tell us if that is a workable plan or not. So what we're doing already, we're in process, is making that application. We'll get an answer from them. If they say no, you can't get credit for extended life, we'll come back to you and say, for next year, we'll say, either we replace this thing or we don't. And if we don't, the underwriters won't recognize it, and then it's going to impact insurance premiums. So that you'll make that decision either way next year. So you don't have to make a decision now on it. I just want to let you know that we're working on an extension, and at some point we'll be in front of you saying it's approved or not approved for extension, and then you can make a decision either way.
What are the areas, or what are the facilities that this truck would need to access, or you would need this truck in order to access?
Well, the layperson looks at how high the ladder is and how many high buildings we have, and the sense is it's to get people out of windows, which is what ground ladders are for. You know, a ladder like you have in your backyard. It's to get up and get someplace. These things are they're critical tools in the fire service now. You don't see a municipality with a ladder truck anymore. This truck is a sister truck to Ladysmith, and I think they're going to replacement. Do you know, Wes, if they're going this year? Yeah. So on their 20-year cycle, right? It was produced. They joke ours was done on a Monday, theirs was done on a Friday because theirs kept breaking down, but it was produced at the same time. So the buildings that would access, every building we go to. It's the second vehicle out of the station for every fire we have, whether it's a house fire or an apartment fire or an industrial fire. It's a water tower, so you put it up and you can spray water from up high, and it's a means of egress so we can get victims or ourselves off of high places. It prevents us from having to put people on roofs because they can work off a ladder. It's just a fundamental, it's a basic tool in firefighting now, but I understand that lay people don't see it in the same sense. It's almost like a carpenter having a laser level, let's say, it's just become an expectation that every carpenter has a laser level. They're not using strings and plumb bobs anymore,
Is this the only ladder truck in the valley?
It is, yeah.
So you would use it if you were going to a structure fire out at Sprout Lake or a structure fire out at Beaver Creek?
Good question. It's not the first response vehicle for automatic aid. So they've asked for an engine, which an engine is a fire engine, no ladder. So the engine goes under automatic aid, but if any of them ask for it, Cherry Creek, Beaver Creek, or Sprout Lake ask for it under mutual aid, we'll go, yeah. Not generally well used in the region because a lot of their houses have long driveways, and we can get to our houses from the curb. You can't as well in the regional areas if you've got a driveway and a ditch and all that kind of thing. It takes up a fair bit of real estate with the outriggers that are out and things, but it does go into their areas when they ask for it.
If there was if there was a fire at, say, the water bomber hangar, or if there was a fire at Sprout Lake Landing,
yes,
you'd want this out there?
If they asked for it, it would go, and that's their decision. We've had it at Nagard's sawmill, so it has gone out, but if they request it, it goes. Yeah. We had, you may recall when we burned the downtown manor 4 years ago, and our ladder truck actually failed. It broke down in the middle of that incident, and we very quickly turned around an agreement with Qualicum Beach to bring their ladder truck over the hill, and they got here really quickly. And I was really impressed how quickly we were able to reach that agreement, and they came in and worked for us for like 4 hours or something. But it's the only one in town. It's I can't see us going without a ladder truck. Like I can't see ever getting to the point where I recommended to you not to have a ladder truck.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that's that one. I think I'm just about done. Oh, a couple things that I wanted to point out. One was the ladder. The other one's the underwriters survey. So the fire underwriters, they're a little bit like BC Assessment. They come in and they apply a rating to a community for fire protection. They rate our water system and our streets and a bunch of things, and certainly our fire department. They apply a rating on a scale of 1 to 10, and then insurance premiums for buildings other than single-family dwellings are adjusted according to that. We haven't done ours since the mid-'80s. We're very overdue. So we've engaged them to come to town next year, and we agreed to pay them a little more than the base fee because we want a written report. So they'll come in and do a review and just give us a number and say, you're number 4, and walk away. Or you can pay them a little bit more, and that's actually pretty good value, the extra, and we'll get a written report. And it'll tell us where we're strong and where we're weak. And I think one of the beauties of having them come in this year, not only will they test our automatic aid value, and they'll test our 30-year lifespan plan and our ladder extension plan. It's an opportunity for us to ask them specific questions. So as a council, if you say, do we really need a ladder truck, we can ask them that question. So I would encourage council as a group at some point to, and I'll ask you again before they get here, but decide what you want to ask them. So these are people that go to all these communities. So if you want to ask them specific questions, ask them those, and they'll respond to those in their report. So it's pretty good value, I think. So we're thinking that's in third quarter of this year, that review. There's one more slide. And I wanted to talk to you about the tsunami warning system. You'll recall that over the previous 5 years, we replaced all of the equipment at all 4 of our sites. So those are all done now. Our system is basically new. The poles are original. We had them tested. They've got lots of life left in them. They're red cedar. And so we don't need capital investment in our minds in that system right now. But Taschat First Nation got some grant money, and they purchased a 5th station. And talking about partnerships, they were going to go down this path of setting up their own tsunami warning system, and we managed to reach an agreement with them where they've already purchased a station, a 5th one that'll work completely hand in glove with ours. So it'll be owned by them, maintained by them, but operated by us, and triggered at the same time with the same message. They want one extra message, a river flooding message, which makes sense where they are, so we'll build that in. But this kind of starts down the path of this vision that we have is building out this tsunami warning system with multiple stations that aren't necessarily city funded. So as we get private partners and First Nations partners, we can build this out with as many stations as we need, and all operated within the same system and at no cost to the city. So really pleased with that. And I think that's it, Mr. Mayor. Yep.
Thank you. Council, questions? Councillor Survey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I find it crucial for the ladder truck. I'm just surprised that I guess it's something you just discovered or was discussed from last year, but I thought I heard some talking about it from last year. But I don't see it in our 5-year financial plan that I speak of, so hopefully we'll get to see that and see how it could be projected. I want to refer council to page 50 of the 5-year financial plan, the draft. Fire safety message boards, that would be the control board or room council you're speaking of? No,
that's a different project. If I can back up to the 5-year plan on the ladder truck, it was in the 5-year plan for 2017, and if it's not in there, for 2017, it's because we've moved it out anticipating that we're going to extend the life. But it has always been in as 2017, but because we're anticipating extending the life, it might not be in there now. Okay. But it was there last year.
But it's getting close to that. I feel it should be in this year's, at least as a projected for a capital project.
Yeah.
Also the...
Sorry, you mentioned the signboard. That's not in the control room. That would be an electronic signboard on the front lawn of the fire department.
Okay.
That location is ideal for messaging. This idea came to us, not that we hadn't thought of it before, but it came to us from Air Quality Council. They're looking for some kind of electronic signage that could make people aware when there's a low air quality advisory. And then we can do things on social media and that kind of thing too, but they were looking for something like this. So we said, well, let's see if we can move that way. We do have access to city-operated signs at Echo and at the multiplex, I believe. And this is proposed for, what year was that, 2019?
It says in here 2016.
2016. Yeah, that's why I'm kind of concerned about.
No, it shouldn't be in 2016. Oh, it's been moved. That's a 2019 line you're looking at, and it says it's been moved to 2016. I think I've moved that in a previous year, but it's not in 2016 now. If you look at the 2016 line, it's not there. It's been moved several times, I think, and that's an old note. My mistake.
Okay, no problem. And as for the generator, it's been moved to the capital project for 2016. I'm just confused as to the amount of 45,000. You estimate at 60,000, but it's now 80.
It's
I guess
60
that's
now.
it. Yeah. Okay.
It
In the
was
in the draft portion here, it states 80. That's why.
Okay,
Okay. Great. Thank you very much.
okay.
Councillor McLennan?
Yeah, thanks a lot. I just noticed if you bought that truck this year at 68 cent dollars, it'll only be $714,000. I don't know if that's saving us money or not, though, if we can keep it for 4 more years. Question on the truck. Every time we sell a fire truck, I hear for months on end that so-and-so bought it and they're still using it, how come you don't? So how come another city can use that when we're not allowed to?
That's a question that you ask me every year.
Yeah, I don't remember the answer, maybe. Or maybe I'm hoping for a better one.
Maybe I didn't answer it very well. So the underwriters drive the life of the registered life of a truck. You can drive it for as long as you want. So we're driving a tanker truck, for example, from 1978, but it's not registered by the underwriters, so there's no value in terms of insurance. But we run our trucks for 20 years because we want to get the recognition from the insurance companies. And after 20 years, they don't recognize a truck anymore. That's the issue. So they say after 20 years, that truck is not dependable. It's not recognized as being a truck anymore. You're allowed to use it in a reserve capacity. So when we run our trucks for 30, we have 3 engines. 2 of them are under 20 years, and 1 of them is older than 20 years. And so as far as the underwriters are concerned, it's a reserve truck. It's not actually a frontline truck. And we've replaced the credits through automatic aid. So we have 2 engines coming. This is hard to follow. We have 2 engines coming from Sprout Lake and Beaver Creek. We get 50% value from both of those as far as the underwriters are concerned. So they're by their documents, they'll give us value for 1 engine from automatic aid. So that lets us let 1 of them be older. So we've achieved the longer lifespan through automatic aid, and we think without impacting on insurance. And this could be a house of cards. They might say that's not on, but we've worked really carefully with their documents and met their criteria, and now they're going to come and test that whole plan. And so a truck that's more than 20 years old has no value to a community that needs to rely on it for insurance premiums. It has value for firefighting. It still pumps, and so you'll see them in rural areas where they have marginal insurance, or where they have enough trucks that they don't. It's just 1 more truck, right? And so that doesn't help you. But they're worth about $4 or $5 grand. The last one we sold was for, I think, $5,000, and it sat in a barn for 2 or 3 years. And now it's sitting at the campsite in Pachina Beach.
Sitting where?
It's at the campsite for the Huey. It's at Pachina Beach. I don't even know if it runs. Like unfortunately, there's no market value for a used truck that's more than 20 years old.
At Tofino Beach.
No, Pachina.
Pachina.
Yeah,
Okay,
Pachina.
so it didn't sound like a way it wrote that way.
Yeah.
Okay, so if Duncan buys it, say, for $5,000 or $50,000, their insurance doesn't go down because they got it.
No. They might be able to get it recognized as a reserve, but it's not recognized as a frontline engine.
So, and this is commercial insurance.
Commercial insurance, yeah. So good point. The insurance premiums for residential, single and duplex households is on a different scale, and they're a much easier scale to meet. So we're talking about commercial insurance, so industry, commercial buildings, and multifamily buildings.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other council? All right, I think you've done a good job. Thank you very much for your
Thank you.
presentation.
Thanks.
One question?
Yep.
I noticed that on page 5 in our revenue and expenses budget summary, it shows a percent increase over the prior year of 2.3%, and you show, I think, less than that.
I told you a 1.9 net, and I
Yes.
think the 2.3 is the increase in expenditures, and then we have an increase in revenues that offsets that to 1.9.
Oh, I see. Okay. Is it? Thank you.
Okay.
All right, council, that's our presentation for this afternoon. There doesn't appear to be any other questions. Are there, council provide further directions? Well, they're staff, so
Looking at the press gallery.
the press, yes,
quiet.
yeah.
Our questions afterwards.
Yeah, okay. Council, any direction or request information we need? Yes, Councilor McClellan?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, well, we're coming, like, I guess just one more, or two more presentations tonight. And, this part of the budget process, I guess, is over, and I understand, oh my goodness, I understand we're getting a public meeting soon. But I was wondering when we can have a time, if we could arrange a time where we as council can, have some kind of workshop where we go over all the information, all the questions answered that we've asked, and so far that hasn't happened. And we can come up with a plan with a budget that makes sense.
No, it's a good idea. We need to get together to look at it before we go. to-
Yeah, so maybe if you could set a date, I guess
Yeah.
I know we've talked about it, but, it doesn't hurt to set one and make sure we can all be there.
Okay,
And that means you, Chris.
yeah,
He's listening.
yeah. He's listening, yeah. Any other questions, council? I know, I have a question, and it relates to, it's Fortis money. Fortis gave some money to council to the city in the fall. And it was part of a grant, but it was only part of a year, because they only did the calculation for part of the year. And I would like council to be able to find out exactly what happened to that money. Where did it go, what happened to it? Has it been spent, or is it sitting in a reserve fund somewhere? What are the plans for it? It's not a lot. I think it's less than $30,000. And I think we got our questions about Walmart taxes resolved.
Mr. Mayor, there's been a number of questions, and staff are working on answers to those questions, so I'm thinking there might be more questions tonight as well. And then at some point, we'll bring back documentation on all those questions.
Right.
Okay, and this one included.
Okay, thank you. All right, council, unless there's any more, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
You did want to go back to work, right? All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everybody.